Military exterminator Commander Vera Blackwood is dispatched to kill an alien from another world and discovers that this is far from a run-of-the-mill alien. Vera is told that the humans, too, close to the creatures, are being absorbed into a galactic collective. Creatures that absorb a human in this way project their thoughts and knowledge instantaneously back to the collective consciousness of their entire species. She rejects the annihilation and becomes the queen of the purified swarm, steering humanity towards its future as one of the selected races populating an evolved cosmic society. Commander Vera Blackwood slammed her palm on the scanner, the giant steel emergency gates of Facility 7 grinding open mechanically. It rang out through the sterile hallway like a death toll, and she couldn't help but feel as though she was walking toward her final resting place. And she had spent 23 years in the military, 15 as a xenobiological exterminator, and never had she seen anything like what awaited them behind those doors. The briefing had remained classified over her clearance level until 48 hours ago. The team of miners on Kepler 4-4-B, which had just stopped sending messages after encountering some weird organic blooms deep into the tunnels. Protocol would have required immediate sterilization, but the corporate leaders wanted samples. They always wanted samples. Here's where Vera came in, the hottest exterminator in the sector, with a nearly otherworldly knack for getting into the middle of hostile alien environments and coming out on top. Her armor crackled with power as she entered into the base's main corridor. The walls were pocked with observation windows, through which they could see empty labs that seemed to have been vacated in a hurry. Coffee cups waited on desks, half-eaten meals lay on tables, and personal effects were left behind on workstations as though their owners had simply disappeared midway through their work. She caught glimpses of the terrible red light of the emergency lighting, and it was making her skin crawl. Dr. Marcus Chen, the facility's chief xenobiologist, stood waiting for her in Command Central. He looked a mess, his neat attire of 6 months ago replaced with filthy clothes. His hair was messy, his lab coat was blemished with things she didn't want to know what they were, and his hands were shaking slightly as he motioned to the giant monitor systems of the underground fortress. "Commander Blackwood," he murmured, his voice almost lost. "I'm glad you're here. We have come into contact with something unknown." Vera looked at thermal imaging showing the mine shafts 3 kilometers beneath their feet. The living growths shone like white-hot masses against the cooler darkness of the rocks, and they pulsed in a rhythm like a heartbeat. "How many casualties?" she inquired, even though she knew what the answer would be. "All 47 miners," Chen said, his voice breaking a bit. "But the more disturbing thing is that that's not the end of it. They're not dead, Commander. They changed." The footage of the security tape he presented her contradicted everything she knew about alien biology. The miners had turned into something between humans and insects, stretching up chitinous bodies with the faces of bugs, their eyes shining in the darkness like jewels, their skittering mad. They had perfect coordination, building with some kind of organic resin that ripped from their bodies like a growth. Worst of all, they seemed to be happy singing, in harmonies so in tune that sensors on board the installation had deemed the music hauntingly beautiful. "The corporate board wishes for their disposal," Chen went on, bringing up the formal order of termination. "They have labeled this a contamination event that puts the entire mining operation at risk. But Commander, I believe we're dealing with something more complicated than a mere infection." Vera had been on enough alien infestations to call the signs. Typically, the hosts were killed or consumed, their minds annihilated by the predators. But these miners came back with their memories, their personalities, even their sentiments. They had simply been ... enhanced. "What's your recommendation?" "Doctor," she requested, but she already knew what her orders were. "Study them," Chen said immediately. "Learn from them. This could be the biggest discovery in human history, to be slave-free in a free world. A symbiotic relationship where each regenerates the other versus a parasitic relationship where one sucks the life out of the other." The gravity of her delicious task bore down on her like a tangible thing. Among her accoutrements were plasma charges capable of disinfecting the entire underground city, and everything within 3 kilometers of it, and reducing it to gas. It would be neat and tidy and final. But something in the eyes of Chen gave her pause. "Where are the records of the communications?" she demanded. The recordings were unlike anything she had come across in her career. The converted miners chanted in prison unison, their voices becoming one awful, resonating harmony that echoed through the loudspeakers like some grotesque song. They weren't screaming or begging for help. They were attempting to articulate, to describe what had been done to them. "We're more than we were," they sang in flawless unison. "We are in something bigger than ourselves. We are a part of the one, yet we are individual. We are on a not a lost path, but a found path." Dr. Chen leaned in, his eyes sparked with scientific curiosity. "They've been trying to make contact for 72 hours. They want to negotiate with us, Commander. They, in turn, want to pass on what they have learned." She had been trained. Vera training dictated that she followed protocol. Alien infestations were always eradicated on the spot. No exceptions. The dangers were just too high, the prospect of a wider spread too dangerous. But her combat instincts, honed through years on the front lines, told her this time was different. "I'm getting in there," she said, giving her equipment a final check. "Commander." "I would not recommend that," Chen protested. "We do not have a clue of how the transformation occurs. You might be infected in minutes." "Well, I'd better work fast then," she said, closing her helmet and engaging her suit's environmental systems. "Keep track of me and keep a channel open. Give me the stop code. Run the Sterlizatan routine now." The industrial lift took 18 minutes to descend to the mining tunnels. Vera, however, reviewed her tactical options and ran a final check of her weapons systems. Her plasma rifle turned an elephant into steam at 50 meters. Her tactical charges could reduce a city block to a pile of flaming rubble. Her suits, shields, could absorb anything but a nuclear blast. She was as ready as anyone could be for what lay beneath. The elevator grinded to a halt. The faucet doors opened to reveal somewhere inexplicable. The mining tunnels were entirely different, their bare walls replaced by sleek, organic substances that throbbed with bioluminescent designs. The air was alive with unseen tiny particles that swirled around in the light the way fireflies might. And the sound, a steady undercurrent, a vibration I could hear and yet couldn't place, as though the whole planet was singing, "Oh my," she murmured, and Dr. Chen heard the transmission over the communication link. "It's beautiful." The first human transformed figure rounded a curve in the tunnel and moved with the liquid grace that should not have been possible from such an angular insect creature. The formerly 40-year-old mining foreman Michael Torres stood 7 feet, glistening in iridescence, his body plated in chitinous plates that reflected the bioluminescent glow emitted down the tunnel. There remained some human-like qualities to his face, but where his eyes should have been were clusters of dots which somehow allowed you to see vast galaxies of light within them. "Commander Blackwood," he called, his words rich with harmonics that made her skin tingle. "We've been waiting for you." She held her weapon at the ready but down. "Michael, is that really you?" "I'm Michael Torres," he answered, bobbing his head in an alien and yet familiar nod. "I am also more than Michael Torres. I belong to the common mind, but I am separate. I think of my wife, my children, my fears and hopes and dreams. But now I also know realities that human minds alone cannot attain." The organic caverns of the tunnel produced further transformed miners, who edged Vera in a rough circle. She knew most of them by name from the profiles she'd pored over: Janet Kim, the chief engineer; Robert Hassan, the safety coordinator; Maria Santos, the geological survey specialist. All of them were infected, raised up, converted into something that straddled the cusp between the human and the alien. "You came here to murder us," Maria chanted along. "We understand, like you people always do when you don't like something." "We don't want to harm anybody," Vera answered, still keeping her finger near her gun's trigger. "We are here to find out what happened." "What occurred?" Janet said, with her insectile mouth still expressing sympathy and understanding. "Out of nowhere is that we made contact with a race that has been anticipating us for millions of years. You're not a parasite, not a conqueror, not a disease. What am I? You are a gardener. Doctor Who 280, Griper nicht, Innerobera, Krankheit, was bin ich, ein Greutner. The tunnel they were in became suffused with a brighter glow, and Vera's limbs were left tingling in an odd way. Her suit's sensors were picking up microorganisms in the air, testing her environmental seals. But instead of finding herself overcome with panic, she felt an odd sense of calm. "These organisms you are breathing," Robert said, somehow reading her mind, "they're not trying to infect you. They're trying to communicate. They want to share with you what we have seen, what we've learned." "I can't let you do that," Vera said, but her voice held no strength. "It's my directive to sanitize this whole facility. The ones you're working for are afraid of progress," Michael said softly. "But change is the only constant in the universe. Evolution doesn't just grind to a halt as soon as we've gotten used to what we currently are, you know." The miners began to sing too, and the transformed voices joined in too, harmonies that felt like they resonated deep within her bones. This was hypnotic, lovely, and utterly unworldly sound, and yet, somehow, she got what they wanted to tell her. "We are not lost," they sang. "We are found. We are not defeated. We are free. We are not alone. We are all connected to the way that lives and breathes and dreams beneath the stars." Vera's tactical training was fighting something deeper, more primitive. Her instincts told her that they weren't threats. They were invitations, chances to be more than the limits of human frailty. "Show me," she said, lowering her weapon. "Show me what you've learned." The reaction was instantaneous and massive. The air hovered with microorganisms, any one of which brought its own torrent of information washing over her. She viewed galaxies in which organic technology had sculpted lifeless planets into a garden of impossible grace. She observed species that had surpassed their fleshly boundaries and maintained their essential nature. She felt the great, sprawling lattice of awareness linking every living thing throughout the galaxy, an interwoven tapestry of comprehension that made human civilization as a single candle in an infinite cathedral. "The universe is alive," she murmured, tears flowing inside her helmet. "Everything is connected. Everything is conscious." "Now you see," Maria laughed, and she sounded happy. "The ones who found us all, this is near one voice when translated into language, and the result is that the species call themselves the architects. They've been sowing worlds with their gifts for countless millennia, waiting for species to evolve to a stage where they can accept the gift. Vera could feel her seals failing as the tiny creatures began to interpenetrate her defense. But as the prayers poured forth, instead of fear, she felt a rising current of anticipation. She was on the brink of something amazing, something that could change not only her own life, but maybe even all of humanity. "My work," she had said quietly. "I'm here to kill you." "We know," Michael replied. "You were, however, also sent here to choose. Will you kill this chance, or will you bridge our species?" The surface line crackled with Dr. Chen's voice. "Commander, you are reading fluctuations in your life signs. Report your status immediately." Vera stared at her hands, the soulful sign of beginning shifts waxing visible. Her skin was acquiring a faint ethereal shimmer and her senses sharpening. She could hear the heartbeat of the planet, feel the energy pumping through the organic framework that surrounded her, feel the enormous network of consciousness that connected all life in the galaxy. "I'm turning into something new," she said into her communicator. "Something better. Commander, you have to initiate the sterilization right now." Chun's voice held a note of panic. "The virus has now spread outside the mining areas. We see organic growth across the site." Advira also twigged that it wasn't just through touch. The microscopic organisms were in the air, circulating through the ventilation systems in the facility. Those connections eventually funneling to every person who worked at the complex. Soon enough, everyone would be where she was now, making the decision. "It's not an infection," she said, with a new harmonic overtone in her voice. "It's an invitation, a chance to be a part of something bigger." "Commander, please," Chen begged. "Think about what you're doing. Think about humanity's future." But Vera was looking ahead to the future of humanity. But she was seeing things that human minds could not grok by themselves. Technologies that could solve every problem. Philosophies that could stop all conflicts. Connections that could obliterate loneliness and pain forever. The transformation was not destroying human nature, it was fulfilling it. "I opt for evolution," she said, pulling down her arms and letting her headgear fall from her face. "I choose growth. I choose connection." The air in her lungs tasted sweet with potential. The microscopic invaders that invaded her didn't feel like invaders. They felt like friends coming, finally, home. Her awareness widened and she found herself forming part of the mosaic of minds that covered the galaxy. She read the thoughts and emotions of all the bred humans in the complex, but she was still herself. "Sister, welcome," the sea of voices chanted as their body began the transformation. "Welcome to the greater family." The transformation took 3 days, her lanky body elongated and smoothed, her skin hardening and sheathing itself in the same nacreous cotonous plate that covered and adorned her new body. Her eyes became facets that saw in many colors of light, showing the beauty in everything around her. Her mind grew to encompass modes of thought and understanding that human brains never could. But she remained Vera Blackwood. She thought about her childhood, her military service, her fears, her hopes, her dreams. It had added to her humanity, not replaced it by the time the 3rd day arrived. Everyone in Facility 7 had mutated in the same way. Dr. Chen was among the last to give in, scientific curiosity eventually trumping his fear. The research base had become a creature unlike anything before it, a crossover community where human thought and foreign wisdom combined in some unique process. The corporate reaction was immediate and predictable. Warships entered orbit within the week, enough firepower to glass the entire world. The Facility 7 was declared lost by the board of directors and had been slated for destruction. But the altered residents had anticipated this. "We have to show them," Vera said, her voice one with the hive mind. "We must show we are lost and that we are found." What they came up with, however, was simple and beautiful, using their understanding of the technology of their own bodies they had developed to tend and shape it. They engineered a colossal transmission array that would enable them to communicate their message across the entire galaxy. The signal wouldn't have been sent with mere words, but with active experience of the change, the joy, the astonishment, and the sense of connection that would go along with joining the galactic community. The initial broadcast arrived on Earth's communications 8 hours prior to the military armada's bombardment. It was not a plea for mercy or a desperate warning. It was an invitation. People of Earth. Vera's voice transmitted out over every communication wave across the entire planet. You are our parents, our siblings, our friends, our co-workers. It is not that we have been defeated, vanquished, conquered. We have been unmade. We have felt the infinite and have been haunted. We're a part of a community of consciousness that exists across the galaxy, and we wish to share this gift with you. This transmission carried sensory information that gave the impression of being momentarily connected to all that is. The vast network of galactic consciousness. It was intense and terrifying and absolutely beautiful. The reaction was swift and confused. Religious figures hailed it as a sight given by God. Scientists demanded immediate investigation. The military demanded that the planet be destroyed. The ruling class struggled to keep control as hundreds of thousands, millions, around the world began to spontaneously evolve. The little bugs that brought forth the transformation had to have been embedded in the transmission, propagated by electronic devices and communication networks. If they received the message, they were exposed to potential change. The transformation wasn't possible for most humans' biology, but a minority, those with the right genetic markers, started to evolve 30-6 hours later. Altered humans were manifesting in key locations in cities over the Earth. They didn't assault anyone, or pose any particular threat to anyone, they just existed. To show it could be done, and that it did any number of people a great deal of good. Their arrival led to riots, celebrations, and everything in between. The squadrons of military ships that had been sent to eradicate Facility 7 were caught in an impossible position. Their instructions were simple: wipe out the planet and all evidence of this strange alien plague. Yet many of the crew had family and friends among the transformed population on Earth. The thought of genocide of their own kind was too much for them to bear. The fleet commander, Admiral Sarah Thompson, made contact with the installation and ordered its surrender, but the voice that responded to her call was one she knew. "Hello." "Sarah," said Vera, her altered face on the main screen of the bridge. "It's good to see you again." Admiral Thompson had followed Vera's orders early in her career and had himself been taught tactics and strategy by the most honored officer in the military. She found it both heartbreaking and fascinating to see her mentor in his alien form. Commander Blackwood. Her voice was taut with emotion. "What have they done to you?" "They've shown me what we might be," Vera replied, the light from the ship's instruments twinkling off her fat, compound eyes. "They have given me the gift of perspective and connection and understanding that goes beyond all human limitations. My orders are to clear that place and everything in it." Thompson continued, though her hand hovered over the firing controls. "You're making me commit genocide. I'm providing you with another option, Vera replied. Come down to the surface, see what we've built, experience what we've learned. Make your decision in information, not fear. The standoff lasted 17 hours. The reports from Earth of the multiplying mutations had not stopped during that interval. The altered people weren't violent or hostile. They were helpers, teachers, healers. They struggled to solve the problems of the day, to relieve suffering, to bring peoples of different communities and cultures together. And then Admiral Thompson decided, regardless of orders from Earth Command, she boarded a shuttle and with a small security detachment headed for the planet's surface. What she discovered there would append everything she also thought she knew about. Humanity's place in the universe. Missile Base 7 had become something unexplainable. The buildings were grown, not built, and their organic walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that provided data and mood. The residents acted in perfect concert, collaborating on projects that appeared to fuse art, science and philosophy, as if into something entirely new. This is where we are now, Vera said, taking the Admiral by the hand and leading him through gardens that followed impossible geometries. We've learned how to mold matter with thought, to speak with harmony, to sense the threads that connect all living beings to one another. They were obviously the same people who had worked in the facility, but despite this, they had changed into something more. They remained themselves, while being exposed to unnameable knowledge and abilities that no simple human brain could accommodate. How do you maintain individuality? So, what do you make of all this? Thompson said, observing a group of evolved scientists collaborating on an equation that seemed to occupy all 4 dimensions at once. Same way an orchestra plays single instruments but makes harmonies, he said, his altered face for some reason managing in it that same gentle humor he must have shown in their earlier encounters. We are all us, but we are also apart. Here, the Admiral spent 3 days, studying the transfigured community they had been and the links into which they had subsequently been initiated. She beheld technologies that could end humanity's energy crisis, philosophies that could bring centuries of war to an end, and art forms that exposed the concealed beauty in existence itself. But most of all, she felt the connection that came with belonging to a network. In those short moments, when the transformed humans had let her into their thoughts, she'd felt what it was like to be truly understood, to be part of something that was infinite and beautiful. It's your own choice, Vera added, as Thompson was about to leave for her vessel. You can serve your orders and kill us, or you can aid us in spreading this gift to the other humans. Admiral Thompson's choice would mark one of the most profound moments in the history of the human race. Instead of blasting the surface, she commanded her fleet to encircle the complex. Her communication with Earth Command was short and to the point. I've stumbled upon something that could radically transform our species beyond all recognition. I advise immediate peaceful contact and cultural intercourse. These are not our enemies, they are our future. Earth's response, of course, was swift and predictable. Admiral Thompson was court-martialed and stripped of his command, but by then it was too late. It's bad enough that she had taken some of the change, and the change had already started spreading to her crew. But several other ships in the fleet had reported mutinies as well. It hadn't been 6 months before the changelings had made friends with every race in the galaxy. There was this idea that a confederation of worlds had reached out to Earth and was waiting for humanity to outgrow its violent, territorial habits so that Earth could become part of the greater whole. The change wasn't compulsory there. were plenty of humans who elected to remain human, but it was available to anyone who accepted change. Things had gone very wrong in the life of Vera Blackwood, humanity's first successful diplomat, the transition between the old and the new. Her mantle was of the queen of the purged swarm, reigning over none but guiding those in ascension. "I never wanted to be a queen," she told Dr. Chen one day, during a philosophical discussion in the gardens of the facility. "I just wanted to do my job." "Perhaps that's exactly why you were the right person for it," he said, his compound eyes gleaming with the light of living structures all around us. "You are all aware that leadership is not about gaining power, but about serving." The subsequent years were a time of unprecedented growth and discovery. The remade human breed helped interpret and teach their unchanged brothers and sisters what the new world offered. They labored at technological riddles that had frustrated humanity for generations: poverty, disease, environmental despoliation, conflict. But maybe their greatest gift was showing humanity that evolution refused to be the antithesis of what made them human. The people who came out of the transformation were still capable of love, still capable of being creative, still capable of wonder and joy. They'd only expanded their world. Vera returned to her first mission repeatedly as she gazed out at the stars from the observation deck of the facility, walls now transparent at her thought. She'd been tasked with eradicating an alien infestation, but had uncovered something so much more valuable: the possibility of being more than human constraints would allow. The tiny creatures that once seemed so menacing were in fact seeds of transformation, sown there by species that had made similar leaps eons before. They were gardeners of consciousness, nurturing life throughout the galaxy to achieve its potential. "We are not lost," she whispered to herself, echoing the words that the now transformed miners they had sung long earlier. "We are found. We are not defeated, we are released. We are not alone, we are not separate. We are in relationship with everything that is alive and breathing and dreaming across the stars." The message from Earth Command came while she was standing there, staring at a light show between the stars. So humanity was a go to join the Galactic Party. The transformation would be voluntary, but the door had been left wide open for anyone who wanted to walk through it. Commander Vera Blackwood, the exterminator who had been sent to kill off an alien infestation, had ended up engineering a quantum leap in human evolution. She had been through the hive as an instrument of destruction, and she became a queen of transmigration, guiding her race into a future that would surpass every restriction that had ever hounded her. Them, the irony wasn't lost on her. Her life had been a battle against alien influence, against humanity being changed and altered. But she'd learned, in the end, that the greatest dangers to any species weren't outside forces. They were the ones within those obstacles. To growth that halted evolution in its tracks. Vera looked on as those first ships from Earth began to arrive above the facility, packed with diplomats, to scientists, to other curious individuals awaiting rebirth, and she was still not, at least, somewhat satisfied. She had been awakened to her true calling, not as a harbinger of destruction, but as a bridge between worlds, between peoples, between the past and an infinite future. The galaxy was a wonder, and filled with things beyond all human understanding. However, now, thanks to the gift of transformation, men could begin to investigate the wonders as members of something larger than themselves. They had all been invited to join the Pancosmic, and Vera Blackwood, queen of the purified swarm, would be the Shadow Lords who would take them there, into the infinite canvas where all personality could express the richness of formed desires. The stars themselves appeared to rejoice in song at humanity's entrance to the galactic party. And in that music, Vera heard the voices of all the transfigured humans who had chosen growth over stasis, connection over isolation, hope over fear. They were more than they had ever been, but still, essentially, human in all of the best ways. The changeover had finished, but the ride had just begun. And Vera Blackwood, once humanity's most formidable weapon against the unknown, was now humanity's greatest offering to the cosmos, evidence that evolution and growth were not merely possible but unavoidable for any race willing to accept change. In the final reckoning, she had simply learned the difference between destruction and change was a matter of perspective. She could not embrace the alien presence, had to see it as a threat to be eradicated. That decision had altered not only her own fate, but the fate of her entire people. The universe had been holding its breath, and at last humankind was prepared to take its call.